A juicy great salute to you and welcome to the Miniatures-y Wargamey installment of the 2020 Or Shucks preview videos. In a year where publishers can't get to you guys to demo their games, we're doing it for them. And we're doing it sponsored by Ludo Cherry, makers of fine vintage style tabletop inspired shirts that I rather like. But anyway, on with the games, and first we're going to be looking at World of Tanks, the miniatures game. And if you have played the X-Wing miniatures game, a lot about this is going to be quite familiar, but if you've not, don't worry. I'm going to walk you through this game as if you knew nothing, as if you were completely innocent to the pain and danger of the world. And look how much pain and danger we've got in this starter set for World of Tanks, based on the popular video game. We have got 4 tanks, charmingly named the British Cromwell, the American Sherman, the Russian T-34, and the Nazi PZ.KPFW.4ASUF.H, which I think really trips off the tongue. These miniatures are absolutely lovely, as you can see. But as to how you play, as to how you send these tanks roaring across your dining table to fight, well, I'm happy to say it is rather simple. So there's 4 different ways you can play in the base set, some of which is to do with getting objectives and claiming them from one another by parking your tanks there as if you were trying to steal a parking spot. There are game modes which are just about blowing one another up. But whichever way you play, you're going to deploy your tanks on the edge of the table using this little arrow marker. And this gets a lot of use in the World of Tanks miniatures games. So we're going to put that on the edge of the table to show you how I would deploy my Cromwell. And then here again, if I want to put my Sherman here, park them in the middle of all my tokens, which is not ideal. But you know what they say, war is hell. When you decide you're going to have a battle, what you do is you decide how many points that battle is going to be. This is the same as in lots of miniatures games, actually. And then every tank has a point cost, so this Sherman costs 37. And then also, you've got all of this equipment. This is just what comes in the starter set. There's loads of different cards and equipment and crew members that you can equip your tanks with, and all of these have a point value as well. So you could field, say, lots of little tanks, or you could have 1 or 2 big tanks that are just stuffed full of things like improved ventilation and toolboxes and high-octane gasoline and firefighting equipment and gun rammers and, oh, I've just seen there's a card in here that reads pudding and tea, unique to the British side, and you can discard it to get rid of some of the critical damage your tank will take. That's lovely. I like that. That's really cute. But incidentally, one of the ways this differs from X-Wing is that tanks, if you assign them equipment, like let's say I've got this Sherman and I chose to give it some heavy ammo and, I don't know, a camouflage net, you put those cards face down. That means your opponent can see how many points each of those cards is worth, so you know that's big and expensive and that shouldn't be something I need to worry about. But only when the tanks actually use this equipment do you go, ha! I'm using my, pudding and tea or whatever. Because, I don't know if you know this about tanks, but you don't know what's inside them. They're a bit like advent calendars or relatives with potentially poisonous politics in that way. But that is something that isn't in X-Wing, and that's a lovely little surprise that's going to create gotcha moments, so I think that's very cool. But I've distracted you with my tea and pudding for too long. I'm going to teach you how to play. So once you've got some tanks on the board and you've deployed and you know what you're doing, on your turn, it's relatively simple. First off, you're going to do movement. Then all the tanks are going to shoot, and then you're going to do a little thing called the command phase. But all of this happens according to everyone's initiative. So every tank has an initiative value, with low numbers being bad, they're the sort of slow-acting tanks, and high numbers are better. So for movement, moving last is best, because if you can see what all the other tanks have moved, if they've crept into cover or into forests, then you move last, you're going to have the most advantageous position on the board. So movement happens among all the tanks from slowest to fastest. So among these tanks in the starter set, the big, heavy PZKPFW, I'm not going to say the whole thing, but that's the slowest, which means it has to move first. And movement is particularly simple. Again, we're going to take this arrow token. That's going to be placed in contact with the base of your tank anywhere you like, okay? And then you're going to, let's say I wanted to move it sort of towards this cover. I might place it there, and then all you do is you move the tank so that it is flush with the stick. So I could move the tank there, or I could move it there. So you'll do that once. But that is just one movement, and tanks can move multiple times. So in the case of the PZ, it has a mobility of 2. So I could do that again. I could be like, and move it again. And then I would put, because it's move 2, a little 2 movement token next to it. And the reason I do that is because the more tanks move in a turn, the further they move, I should say, the harder it is to hit them, but also the harder it is for them to hit anything. Imagine being a gunner and bouncing around in a tank and you're trying to aim and it's a disaster. So that tank's moved twice, so it's not going to be very good at either shooting or being shot. That tank might stay still because look, it can see this tank right here. That's exciting. However, if you stay still in the World of Tanks miniatures game, it doesn't mean your tank is literally staying still. You might say, I want the miniature to remain there, but I want my tank to sort of juke left and right and drive forward and backward and kind of crazy Ivan it so that it's harder to, again, be hit or hit anyone. So that tank there, our T-34, has a mobility of 3, so we could just leave it there and put a 3 token next to it, at which point it's not going to play an enormous role in the battle, but, you know, it'll probably survive. So you would move all of the tanks in this way, and once they have all moved, so let's put some more movement tokens out, if we imagine we move these 2, then we would shoot. And shooting is, unless you're a very special tank, you are going to just be able to shoot anything because, of course, tanks' turrets can rotate. We're going to go in initiative order again, but this time it's reverse initiative order because obviously shooting first is best because hopefully you can blow up a tank before it even gets to shoot. So the slow tanks that had to move first will shoot last. So our highest initiative value on the board is the nippy little British Cromwell, so that's going to shoot first. It could shoot this tank or this tank, and we know that because all we do is draw a sort of imaginary line from the middle of the turret to anywhere on the opposing tank, and we say, can we do that? Yes, we can. We're not being blocked by any of the houses or walls or forests or hills that you can deploy, or in fact must deploy before every match of World of Tanks. Now let's talk about cover. So that tank is not in cover, obviously, because I can see all of it. However, if I cannot draw a line of sight from my turret to 3 of the 4 corners, so let's imagine that the back half of this tank was hidden behind it. So I can draw a line of sight to 2 of the 4 corners, but not 3. That tank is in cover, which means it's going to roll more defense dice. So, once you've determined whether you have line of sight or whether something is in cover or not, then you are going to assemble your dice pools. And this is incredibly simple. The Cromwell has a firepower of 4, so it's going to roll 4 dice. Ta-da! Now, these are 6-sided dice with 3 possible results. There can be blanks, there can be hits, or there can be critical hits, which are exactly as exciting as they sound. So, in the case of this tank, we've got 2 hits and a crit. Now, remember that. Now we're going to assemble the defense dice of the other tank, which, in the T-34's case, it has a survivability of 1, because it's rubbish. However, it's not the end of the day for our rubbish little Russian tank, because the Cromwell moved once, so it's going to get an extra defense dice. The T-34 moved twice, so it's going to get 2 more defense dice. It's in cover, which means it gets 1 more defense dice, and we're very close to the cap of defense dice. No tank can roll more than 6 defense dice. So we're going to roll those dice, and we got a hit, a crit, and a crit, which is more than enough to cancel everything that was done. The way that defense dice cancel attacks is that every hit rolled by a defender cancels a dice of the attacker's choice. Every crit rolled by the defender cancels a dice of the defender's choice. But let's imagine that we roll all blanks let's just imagine that a hit and a crit got through. That's nice and easy. A hit simply does 1 damage to the tank in question. A crit, you're going to draw from this special critical damage deck to see what happens, and oh no, the turret's jammed! These cards have a damage rating, which is damage that they do, as well as a special penalty. So our T-34's turret is jammed, and it gains the assault gun rule, which means it can only shoot in a straight line. That's bad news for our T-34. So that is the basic overview of the World of Tanks miniatures games. You're driving things around, you're rolling dice, you're getting in trouble, you're claiming objectives, you're revealing all the secret cards you bought set up, and hopefully you're on your way to getting hooked on this game, and then you'll just want to buy more and more of these lovely miniature tanks. Very much a game for tank fans, to state the obvious, but there's all kinds of lovely detailing in this game, from all of the period-specific upgrade cards you can get to all of the lovely different sculpts for all of these 4 countries of tanks. If you like tanks, the World of Tanks miniatures game is quite literally a game you can buy that uses a very solid foundation that is beloved by, ask any X-Wing player. Games of this type are a tremendous amount of fun. On to the next game. Holy Christmas! Next up, we are going to be looking at the first expansion for the enormous sci-fi space opera simulator Twilight Imperium 4th edition. The first expansion is called, I'm saying first, just in a sort of hope springs eternal kind of way. This expansion is called Prophecy of Kings, and I tell you what, No one could accuse them of not putting enough stuff in the box. This table-filling quantity of components is obviously not everything, because look at this sack worth of components and pieces that I've not even punched out yet, because I don't need them to demonstrate to you. Oh no, it's falling off the table. Everything that's in this box, but we're just going to do a quick whistle-stop tour. So, some of the top notes of what you get in this expansion. First off, you get a nice little storage solution. You get a lore bible introducing the new races, and you get the rules, of course. Worth mentioning with the rules, actually, all of these disparate elements that we're going to see, all these new modules and new races and new cards, all interlink. You know, there's new cards referring to new mechanics. The races, you know, might have special abilities referring to new powers. And what that means is that, and this was interesting to me, you put all of this stuff into the game. So you can, you know, it's all marked with little symbols, so you can take it back out of your copy of Twilight Imperium, and that would only take, you know, an hour and a half. The point is that this expansion is a bit of a one-way street. You're going to get it, you're going to install all this stuff, and hopefully you're going to have an even better, richer time. But this isn't, you don't have the option of being like, I'll play with some of this and some of this. No, you're going to play with all of it or none of it. So, what do you get? Well, top note, first off, you're going to get 2 new races. I mean, colors, components for a 7th and 8th player, if you want to do that, including all the cards and miniatures and stuff you get. Also, people are going to be particularly excited by the 7 new races. Like, what have we got here? We've got bird people who are a bit religious and zealous. We've got the gene sorcerers who want to have interactions with all kinds of different players. We've got the Titans of Ul, who are an enormous sort of the Iron Man type thing. We've got the Nomads, who are weird time travelers. We've got the Nazroka Alliance, who are explorers. We've got the Full Wraith Cabal, who are like Doctor Who monsters. And the Empyrean, who are creepy. Goodness, it's a lot of stuff. Obviously, in the classic Twilight Imperium style, all of these races have their own tech, their own ships, their own special tweaks. So that is a lot of fun. What else is important? The other big mechanic in this that is introduced is this deck right here. But everyone in this, with this expansion installed, so to speak, are going to get unique race-specific cards representing their race's agent, commander, and hero. Now, what this really offers is increased asymmetry and special abilities for every single race in the game. These 7 new ones, plus all the ones you get in the old TI. The agent that everyone starts with represents a little ability that you can use. The commander and the hero, interestingly, have to be unlocked first by achieving specific objectives that are, again, unique to those cards, and then they offer unique abilities. The commander is going to offer sort of like a permanent improvement to your entire race, but the hero offers something like an ultimate in League of Legends, where the hero, if you unlock them, is going to do one thing that is going to get the entire table of players going, what? And then it goes away and is put back in the game box. Other super exciting stuff, I guess, would be the new exploration mechanic. So now the 3 kinds of planet genders in Twilight Imperium, which are hazardous, culture, and green, they have their own exploration decks now, and all kinds of different game abilities let you explore the planets in the game that you find. And of course, this being an expansion, there's lots more planets. There's lots more of everything you'd expect, by the way. Outside of these big features I'm mentioning, there's more planets, there are more objectives, there are more secret objectives, there are more agenda cards, there are more action cards, more. There is also, relevantly, more basic technologies, which I put somewhere here. Yes, so every single race in the game gets access to 6 brand new technologies, broadening the kind of tech tumbleweed that you can enjoy in TI. Where was I? Exploration. Yes, so as you get access to different planets in TI's galaxy now, you are going to have the option to explore those planets and draw a card from one of the different decks depending on the type of planet you're exploring. And there are all kinds of funky surprises and bonuses. These cards are exclusively positive. You know, they only ever opportunities, but the real thing in all of those decks are relic fragments. Now, if you get 3 relic fragments of the same color, so 3 blue relic fragments or 3 red ones, you can trade them in, cha-ching, to get 1 card from the relic deck. And I'm not going to spoil any of these cards. Well, I've probably put one in the B-roll. Basically, the relics are ridiculous. Kind of like the hero abilities, the relics offer absurdly powerful abilities. But what I like about the relics is relic fragments are things that players can trade now, in addition to commodities. So that means if you've got 2 blue relic fragments and your friend has 1, then you've got another reason to talk, to trade, to bicker. And really, Twilight Imperium is a game about bickering, let's be honest. Other things I'll mention, there are now 4 legendary planets, which are like normal planets in the game, but they all have their own rule, their own special ability, including Mirage, which isn't a planet hexagon, it's a token, because you have to find the planet Mirage using one of these game effects. And again, I'm not going to spoil which. Also, in addition to, of course, the new custom promissory notes for all of the special custom races, every player in TI now gets a new kind of promissory note to trade with other players called an alliance. And what the alliance card does is, first off, if that player you give it to attacks you, then they give you the alliance card back. But so long as they don't attack you, so long as you stay friends, the alliance promissory note means that that other player has access to the global special ability that you get from unlocking your commander card. So if you can unlock your commander card, it makes your alliance promissory note better, which means you're a better ally to have. What have I forgotten? Definitely something. We've covered the new races. Oh, mechs. How could I forget mechs? They're probably going to be what a lot of people buy this expansion for. Shards of the Throne, that was the old expansion's name. Prophecy of Kings offers mechs, a new unit type, a new sculpt, and these actually act like flagships in that every single species in the game, these 7 new ones, plus all the ones in the base set, get a unique card for their mech, meaning that, like flagships, every single race gets a little bit of extra asymmetry because in addition to your flagships all having different special rules now, while everyone can build mechs, which are basically ground forces but more expensive and better, everyone's mech, every species mech does something different to further increase the richness and flavor of that species. What else should I mention? This is a special tile that the Embers of Muat can use because one of their new global special abilities enables them to turn a hex into a giant burning supernova, and these are pretty cool. These are what are called hyperlane tiles, kind of like interplanetary expressways, and the way that you're going to be using them is putting them in the map at setup in order to ensure that players are all sitting equally distant from one another. But that's all written down in the manual. I don't know what I was expecting from the first expansion for Twilight Imperium 4th edition. I really don't, but I will say that there is a heck of a lot of work that has gone into this. It's definitely bold of the designers to introduce an expansion where you have to play with all of it, and they kind of take the decision, rather than doing what was done in the past with Twilight Imperium's expansions of offering modules, and you could be like, I'll play with this, but not this. With this, it's like you've got everything. So it is cool to see all of these new mechanics they're introducing sort of using one another and making one another all more interesting. I've got to be honest, this is just making me want to play Twilight Imperium 4th edition again, which I guess is the point of an expansion. Let's move on to the next game. I'll tell you what, sometimes this job is all right. Next up, we have TinkerTurf. This is a company who make cardboard, 3-dimensional, obviously, pre-painted, easy to assemble terrain for miniatures war games of a scale that means you could use it for Warhammer. You could use it for Infinity, which I collect when I have time and play when I also have time. Neither of those things happen very often. Necromunda, of course. TinkerTurf do a variety of different terrain sets, but this is their abandoned, gloomy sci-fi terrain, which of course fits so well into so many miniatures war games, which tend to be gloomy and abandoned and, you know, not having particularly gleaming civic infrastructure. But if you've not seen terrain like this before, let me tell you, some of you might have memories of, you know, cobbling together Warhammer terrain in your childhood from train model sets. We are so beyond that now. For years, I was saying, look, why can't we just have cardboard punchboard that assembles into fully painted terrain? Because we all love painting miniatures. Well, I tried to love it, but I just really struggle because I find it very anxiety inducing. But in the abstract, we all love painting miniatures, but we don't love painting terrain, do we? No one wants to paint, 20 sort of ladders and staircases. That ladder is not going to pull off a cool sniper shot and make you love it. It's just going to sit there being a ladder, which is why sort of painted punchboard cardboard terrain makes so much sense, because not only does it immediately, obviously, look great on the table, but it's durable. If someone, hypothetically, I'm just going to sort of do oh, what was that, Quinns? Oh, no, but then all the terrain is fine. I can just knock it around. This stuff was shipped to me, by the way, assembled, just in Ziploc bags, in a big plastic tub. This traveled overseas, and I can shake it confidently because it's that durable. Now, I want to point out a couple of features here. What we've got with these elevated platforms, if you look here, if you just lift it up, it's actually made up of platforms and then legs of different sizes. And the legs just slot into bases. So any platform can be any height you want. In fact, it can be even higher. Using these nifty leg extenders, we can add more leg. And if we did that on both sides, it would be massive. Look, imagine that. Imagine how cool. In fact, I could just do this, couldn't I? Da-na-na-na. I like terrain. Ba-ba-ba-ba. I'm recording this on a Wednesday morning, and this is the best Wednesday morning I've had at work in quite some time. I'm not even hitting the notes that TinkerTurf wanted me to hit. Everything you can see here is their industrial sci-fi starter set. So you get ladders, you get all this nice scatter terrain and cover and tank traps and these crates. I love these crates. And you get all of this with all the things to make it any height you want. For $69, which is obviously pretty great. I mean, I play Infinity. Infinity terrain is such a obnoxious, expensive thing to have to collect, considering how obnoxious and difficult all the rules of Infinity already are. You're like, oh, I have to buy all this terrain as well. 2 of these starter sets would get you enough terrain to fill a full-size Infinity table, or near as damn it. And that is, considering how lovely it looks and how flexible it is and how many different ways you can build it, that's pretty great. But see, TinkerTurf didn't just send me their starter kit, as lovely as all of that stuff is. I just assembled this because it was cool. This is their, oh gosh, let's slide it over because it's made of like 8 component pieces for easy transportation. Let's bring that into frame. This is only falling apart because I moved it. But you get the, I moved it and also did an extremely quick and dirty job of assembling it because there are little guide slots for all of the cardboard that I occasionally ignored. But look, we've got this thing, and it can transport crates like you're in a dock. And then this thing, I believe, slides in. Oh my God. Honestly, I can't tell you enough. This is only wobbling because of user error. But look, it holds the crate. I wish I had more to say about this stuff, but I don't. It's robust, it's durable, it's flexible, and it's cheap, and it looks great. Frankly, I consider this stuff, this kind of cardboard easy assembly terrain, the future of miniatures gaming. I'm very happy to see more and more companies turn to it because, I mean, not only is it cheap, not only is it gorgeous, but it's just cardboard and paper, so it's more sustainable than using plastics and acrylics and whatever else might be involved in your terrain. If I spend any longer on this video, I will just be playing with it as opposed to doing my job. So let's move on to the next game. This is TinkerTurf, and this is their industrial sci-fi starter set for just $69. All right, next up we are looking at a tabletop simulator mod for a game called Veil of Ages. Now this is quite neat. So there is a tabletop fantasy miniatures game called The Ninth Age, which offers something that'll be familiar to fans of Games Workshop. And Veil of Ages is a kind of, it sort of reminds me of Heroescape of all things, a sort of arena combat game featuring all these heroes from the world of The Ninth Age, from the miniatures game The Ninth Age, I believe. But available in this kind of like schlocky, simple, accessible entry point into the series by just saying, hey, let's take all these cool characters and let them fight each other. And in doing so, you'll be learning the foundations of the Ninth Age in a way, and sort of getting into miniatures gaming in a way that's super accessible. And as I understand it, these miniatures, obviously these aren't real miniatures, these are 2D sort of like turn side. I mean, frankly, I think in combat, turning sideways and going completely invisible is an advantage. But I believe that these heroes are only two-dimensional because they've not yet brought in the three-dimensional versions of the miniatures. You can see those. Let me swoop in on this cool elf. You can see that right there, and that's Cyron, and then his friend Kamorko. Well, not friend, enemy, mortal enemy. But I'm getting distracted. So this tabletop simulator mod is cool because this is kind of a tutorial of Veil of Ages, the simple duel game that is in itself a spin-off of the Ninth Age. But what you have here when you load it up is the camera's here, and you learn a little bit about the game, and then you learn tabletop simulator controls. And as you work your way around from card to card, you learn the basics of the game. So it's kind of like it's probably the best tutorial for a miniatures game I've seen, so long as you have some familiarity with miniatures games. So to begin with, we learn the rules for shooting, and we learn how that's what's all written here. And and then the game says, okay, so have a little roll. We can simulate here Kamorko shooting at Cyron. I did not get 2 hits. One of those is to hit and to wound, so it looks like I succeeded at wounding, but not to hit. Also, the fact that you roll those dice at the same time is cute, because it means even if you don't hit, you still get to roll the second dice of to wound, which, if you've played Games Workshop games, you'll agree that is an improvement. Because I didn't succeed, Siren's going to shoot back, and he hit and he wounded, but he didn't penetrate the armor. So Kamorko lives another day. And then we'll move on, and you see, just with a quick rotate of the camera, now we can learn the rules for charging. And the game says, okay, this is what charging is. Here's how you simulate Kamorko charging at Cyron. 7 plus Kamorko's movement value of, what is it? 5. So 7 plus 5 is not going to clear the full 15 inches. So we're just going to move Kamorko equal to the, what is it? Sorry, Kamorko, I didn't mean to rudely drop you there. Move forward the number of inches equal to the high guy. So even though I didn't succeed at charging and closing the distance with the elf, I still have to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches forward. That's going to open me right up to Cyron charging in and attacking me. That's very embarrassing. We can move on. Now this card's going to tell us the rules for fighting, and we're going to roll dice and imagine that Kamorko and the elf are fighting. Then we're going to move on to the rules for movement. And Kamorko and Cyron can... they've got some options here, can't they? Because they can charge, they can move, they can advance, and then look, hidden here, nestled among the stones, like nature is healing, we can see a card with all of the rules, the sort of flow chart for starting a turn. Are you engaged in combat? No. Well, then you can charge or move or advance, and then if you shoot, then you're going to get penalties. And then we can move on. Once we've learned that, we learn about terrain and how placing of terrain works, and we swoop in through this, and we can see some terrain pieces. And if we go back here and flip through the cards, we can see the rules for obstruction, elevation, cover. There's our friend Kamorko. He's a good lad. I think it's a he. I'm not really up on orc genders in the world of the Ninth Age. And then we've got, finally we arrive at kind of like the arena, and it says, hey, look, but you don't have to play with these 2 characters. We've got Imp. We've got, that's an unflattering angle for the Hellhound. We've got a Dryad. And you can look at all of these people's stats. And at this point you're thinking, I don't know what dis and HP means. And the tutorial says, that's fine. Look, see, it's all written down for you. It's like when Ian McKellen was a wizard in Lord of the Rings. He didn't come up with the things to say. Those things were written down for him. And it's just the same in this tutorial for Veil of Ages. And then as we complete the tutorial, we can see all of the cool miniatures that await you. All of the pre-assembled, I believe, miniatures in real life, if you were to buy these. And so, yeah, that's it for a quick overview of Veil of Ages. It's funny because they know how fun miniatures gaming can be, but they say, look, if you want to get into the full miniatures war game of the Ninth Age, then that's going to be difficult. It's going to be expensive. So what if we were to just sell you a couple of miniatures and let you play with them? And then what if we were to teach you how to do that in a very, very considered and of course free tabletop simulator implementation.